35 ironworkers die at work each year. 2,200 workdays are lost every year due to injuries. Steel erection can be a dangerous business. Today we'll help you recognize hazards and work safely. The topics covered in this video will help protect you and your family from the tragic effects of a serious injury. Please, listen carefully. This video will help you work safely. But up on the structure, only you can make the right decisions. Regardless of the amount of experience you have as an ironworker, you may encounter many different types of hazards every day. However, it's not possible to address all hazards or situations that may be present in a construction environment. In addition, the installation of metal deck on sloped or standing seam roofs will not be addressed. That's why pre-job planning and identifying potential hazards is very important. Falls are a serious hazard when installing metal deck. The majority of falls in our industry occur during deck installation. To protect you and your coworkers, we'll show you how to erect, inspect, maintain, and disassemble controlled decking zones. A controlled decking zone, or CDZ, is a restricted area created during the erection process specifically for laying deck. A CDZ may be established when the fall hazard is over 15 feet and up to 30 feet above a lower level. Only ironworkers who've received this training are allowed to work inside a CDZ. Therefore, access into a CDZ must be carefully controlled. The reason is simple. In a controlled decking zone, there's no protection from falling off the leading edge. The term leading edge means the edge of the last sheet of deck that was installed. Therefore, the edge constantly changes or moves. As a result, it may not be practical to install guardrails or other positive means of fall protection that allows for the movement of employees and the constantly changing leading edge. It's important to realize that when you install metal deck, you may have to work at significant heights. And because of that, I strongly recommend you review our fall hazards training video for a thorough look at accessing and working at heights. Now, let's go over some of the common hazards associated with laying metal deck. The edges of metal decking can be sharp. Therefore, iron workers should always wear gloves when handling deck. Consider using a small pry bar to separate the sheets, not your bare hands or a welding rod. Because deck should fit closely around the columns, iron workers should be careful not to place their hands or fingers in pinch points. There are several slipping hazards that may be found while working with metal deck. Be aware that metal floor and roof deck can be slippery under many conditions. These surfaces can be affected by moisture and temperature. Also, the type and condition of the footwear you have on may cause you to slip. Remember, always wear appropriate boots in good repair and make sure they're free of mud, oil, grease, or other contamination that could cause you to slip and fall. Unsecured deck also has the potential to slip and lose bearing. Ensure that all deck has proper and adequate bearing before you walk on it. When walking on unsecured deck, take up and down marching steps. Don't shuffle. Watch out for extra fasteners such as bolts that may have been left on beams or joists. Stepping on them could cause you to slip and fall. If you find these extras, pick them up and put them in your bolt bag to help protect both yourself and your co-workers. You must also be aware of several tripping hazards that exist on steel structures. When carrying or sliding deck, take extra care to watch where you're stepping. Don't ever walk backwards. It's too hard to see where you're going. Shear studs, reinforcing bars, and other anchors are all potential tripping hazards. Even though these and any other accessories should not be attached until the deck is fully installed, be alert for their presence. You may also find welding cables, lifelines, possibly even power cords lying on the surface of the deck. These are all potential tripping hazards. Also, remember when working at heights, don't pull or jerk on welding leads. If they suddenly come apart at connections, you could lose your balance and fall. Remember, a slip or trip can turn out to be more than just falling to the floor. Depending on the situation, you could fall a long way. OSHA defines a decking hole as a gap of at least 2 inches, but less than 12 inches in its greatest dimension. An opening is any gap 12 inches or more in its least dimension. Even though holes are relatively small, foot or leg injuries can result from stepping into one. Of course, openings can pose a much greater hazard. Problems with holes or openings can result from you carrying something and thus blocking your vision. This is especially true when moving deck. That's why it's so important to watch out for open spaces. We'll see later how to safely deal with holes and openings. When decking materials are being hoisted to the Controlled Decking Zone, or CDZ, injuries occur when materials slip out of the rigging or fall off the bundles. That's why it's so important that pieces of decking in a bundle be strapped together when hoisted. Extra materials such as dunnage, flashing, deck screws, or welding rods must also be secured to a bundle when being hoisted. Joists represent a special hazard because they can roll over and lose their bearing if they're not bridged or secured. This can be caused by wind, the weight of an ironworker, or the placing of construction loads such as a decking bundle. For these reasons, no bundle of decking may be landed on steel joists until all bridging has been installed and anchored and all joist bearing ends attached. In special cases, bundles may be landed if all of the following conditions are met. 1. A qualified person is determined and documented in a site-specific erection plan that the structure or area is capable of supporting the load. 2. The bundle of decking is placed on a minimum of 3 joists. 3. Be sure that at least one end is attached on both sides. 4. At least one row of bridging is installed and anchored. 5. The total weight of the bundle does not exceed 4,000 pounds. And 6. The edge of the bundle must be placed within 1 foot of the bearing surface of the joist end. When the joists are fully installed and bridged, we still recommend that bundles should always span at least 3 joists and be placed as close as possible to the bearing ends. Since bundles of joist bridging must not exceed 1,000 pounds, they can be placed on a minimum of 3 joists and 1 foot from the attached ends. Because of the nature of all these hazards, I'm sure you can see the value of developing a site-specific erection plan that's reviewed with all employees. Now that we've identified the common hazards associated with working in a CDZ, let's look at the layout requirements. Remember, a CDZ may be established when the fall hazard is over 15 feet and up to 30 feet above a lower level. The maximum allowed size is 90 feet in any direction. Standard perimeter guardrails, walls, stanchions, or other suitable anchorages must secure the sides. Access to the CDZ is strictly limited by the use of control lines. These can consist of ropes, wires, tapes, or stanchions. They must be a minimum of 39 inches high, including sag, but not more than 45 inches high. The breaking strength of the lines must be at least 200 pounds. Note that a control line is not a suitable fall protection anchorage. Its only purpose is to limit access. Never tie off to a control line. The control line must cover the entire length of the leading edge and can be no closer than 6 feet or farther than 90 feet away. Each end of the control line must attach to a side barrier such as a guardrail, wall, stanchion, or other suitable anchorage. Posted signs that limit access to the CDZ may also be helpful. Once you're ready to install your control lines, lay the first several rows of deck. Then connect the control lines to limit access to the leading edge. If you're installing from a completed section, control lines should already be in place. You should safety tack the deck as soon as possible, using a minimum of 2 attachments per sheet. Remember, unsecured deck can be a fall hazard. In addition, wind can catch a piece of unsecured deck and cause serious damage or injuries. That's why you should never leave any deck unsecured after hours. Even open deck bundles, dunnage, or flashing should be tied down before leaving work. Within the CDZ, you're limited to 3,000 square feet of unsecured deck. We strongly recommend that deck be safety tacked well before this limit. As you continue to install deck, move the control lines ahead to stay within the 90-foot limit. If you're decking a large area, you may want to create multiple CDZs. Of course, all the regulations and procedures must be followed in each CDZ. In order to work in a CDZ, you must have successfully completed this training. Remember, good training is your best defense against an accident or a fall. Furthermore, you must be directly involved in the leading edge work. No other trade is allowed inside the CDZ. In addition, we recommend that you always wear gloves and safety glasses when working in a CDZ. When do you have to be protected from a fall by the use of guardrails or personal fall protection equipment? The answer depends on your working height. If your fall exposure or the height where you're installing metal deck is more than 2 stories or 30 feet above a lower level, then you must be protected from falls at all times. Remember holes and openings? They should be covered as deck is being laid. These spaces should remain covered until just before the permanent installation of the equipment or structure designed for that location. An alternative practice is to cover the holes or openings as follows. Each cover must be capable of supporting without failure at least twice the intended load. Remember, these loads could include employees, ladders, scaffolds, or welding equipment. Be sure to plan accordingly. And each cover must be secured when installed to prevent accidental displacement by wind, equipment, or employees. Also, each cover must be marked with high visibility paint or have the word hole or cover clearly marked to provide warning of the hazard. Now, in the case of large openings, such as stairwells or elevator shafts, deck around them. However, as you approach the opening, if your fall exposure is over 30 feet, you must use some method of positive fall protection. Then, proper guardrails, covers, or safety nets should be promptly installed to protect against falls. The proper use of fall protection, guardrails, and safety nets is explained in the Fall Hazards Training videotape. Finally, it's important to understand that smoke domes or skylights are not considered covers unless they meet the double weight requirement. If there are gaps around columns after decking, they must be covered. Use small pieces of deck, wire mesh, or exterior plywood to enclose them. This provides fall protection and reduces the chance of small objects falling through the gaps. Remember, most falls in the steel erection industry occur while installing metal deck. That's why CDZ requirements were developed, to reduce the chances of falls while still allowing you to work efficiently. So, let's carefully review the main points we've covered today. First, we identified the 6 most common hazards related to laying deck. 1. Sharp edges and pinch points can cause hand injuries. 2. Slippery deck surfaces may cause you to lose your balance and fall. Unsecured deck could lose its bearing and cause you to fall to a lower level. 3. Watch out for tripping over leftover bolts or other fasteners. Also, avoid protruding accessories like shear studs or rebar, welding cables, and lifelines on the deck, holes, and openings. 4. Holes and openings can cause leg injuries or serious falls. 5. Hoisting hazards come from materials slipping from the rigging or falling off bundles. 6. Unsecured joists have the potential to roll over under load, lose their bearing, and fall. Next, we described the layout requirements for a CDZ. Remember, CDZs may be used over 15 feet and below 30 feet above a lower level. The maximum size allowed is 90 feet in any direction. Access to the CDZ must be strictly limited by the use of control lines. They must cover the entire opening to the CDZ and be attached to perimeter guardrails or other suitable anchorage. The control lines must be within 90 feet of the leading edge, but can't be closer than 6 feet. In addition, control lines must be between 39 and 45 inches high, including sag. The braking strength of the lines must be at least 200 pounds. Posting signs may also be helpful to limit access. Remember, a control line is not a suitable fall protection anchorage. Never tie off to a control line. Next, we covered some basic procedures to be followed when working inside a CDZ. After you've installed the first several rows of deck, put up the control lines. If you're adding deck to a completed section, the control lines may already be up. If that's the case, continue to move them as the leading edge moves forward. Be sure to safety tack each sheet as soon as possible. Even though you're allowed up to 3,000 square feet of unsecured deck, it's safer to weld it sooner. Loose deck should be secured if windy conditions are present. In addition, always secure deck, flashing, or other materials when work is over for the day. Finally, we looked at ways to limit the potential hazards in a CDZ. Remember, in order to enter a CDZ, you must successfully complete this training and be directly involved in the leading edge work. Some openings may be covered as the deck is being laid. Otherwise, a special cover must be made and installed, or the opening must be protected by guardrails. The cover must be capable of supporting at least twice the intended load. In addition, the cover must be secured against wind, equipment, or employees. And finally, the cover must be clearly marked as a hazard. For large openings, deck around them using fall protection if required, and install proper guardrails or safety nets for fall protection. Be sure to cover the small gaps around columns after decking. Use small pieces of deck, wire mesh, or plywood, and make sure they're fastened. We hope you learned a few things today that will help you create a safer work environment. I thank you for watching this video. Your family will thank you for coming home safely day after day.